Hey there, Tom here from the Run Testers, and this is our full review of the Ultrahuman Ring AIR. Let's dive in. The Ultrahuman Ring AIR costs $349. It weighs between 2.4 grams and 3.6 grams. The thickness is 2.45 millimeters to 2.8 millimeters, depending on the size of the ring you get. And there's a coverage plan for $30 a year, although that is optional. The main features included with the ring are Sleep Index, which gives you a detailed overview of things like sleep duration, resting heart rate, restfulness, temperature and consistency, combining that information to give a clear report on your overall sleep quality and areas that you may need to improve. Temperature tracking provides constant updates that can help understand factors that may be impacting your overall health, like physiological states, stress, responses to external factors like exercise, and even illness. The Movement Index tracks your activity at any point to maintain optimum glucose metabolism and provides reminders to get up from the desk or sofa in order to increase your non-exercise energy usage. Recovery Score combines HRV insights alongside your activity and sleep to give you a picture of how prepared you are for exercise, or if you need to think about having some time off. There's also something called a phase response curve, or PRC, that gives you guidance on how things like light exposure, food, or exercise at specific points of the day would affect your circadian rhythm. All of this information is delivered by the Partner app that includes detailed live reports, supportive articles and videos to help you understand how to use the information, weekly personalised actionable plans, and a selection of different guided workouts. You'll also get notifications throughout the day to offer timely advice based on your current data. The ring is made from titanium reinforced with a tungsten carbide carbon coating, with the inner tech protected by medical grade hypoallergenic epoxy resin. Sensors included are an infrared PPG sensor, a skin temperature sensor, a 6-axis motion sensor, and LEDs for heart rate monitoring and oxygen saturation. The battery is designed to last up to 6 days on full charge, and it will fully charge in 1.5 to 2 hours. Since launch, Ultrahuman has updated the firmware to include a number of new features. The Stimulant Window Recommender gives personalised recommendations based on individual responses to stimulants like caffeine. Workout Mode, currently in beta, gives users real-time information about their heart rate and provides insights into their cardiovascular response and intensity levels for a range of workout types. You can track these workouts within the app. Cardiovascular Fitness assesses VO2 max and provides insights into cardiovascular endurance and fitness levels, offering personalised recommendations tailored to the user's fitness goals. Zones provides a customisable opt-in experience that allows both members and non-members to easily share their daily scores with other people.
So I tested the matte black Air ring, and for me the Ultrahuman Air is a bit basic, it's a bit bulky compared to the more compact and I think better looking Oura ring, but despite the chunky looks, it's actually light and relatively comfortable to wear 24/7. I found it easy enough to find a good fit for comfort from the ring tests, though I found the Oura a touch more comfortable overall, but we're talking about margins here. Beyond that, what you're getting here in the design is pretty standard smart ring stuff. It's not the most stylish or subtle accessory overall, but it is something you can largely forget you're wearing, and you can wear it without feeling like you're making too much of a statement as well. One thing I will say though, despite the high spec finish to the ring, I still found that it scratched up and it didn't really take kindly to being bashed up against barbells in the gym, for example.
So I've never tested the Oura ring out. This is actually the first one of these rings that I've been using. So I was a little bit concerned because I've never worn a ring in my life, so I wasn't sure how I'd actually find it on my hand. I've never wanted to wear a ring, but I've been using this for about 2 months now, and I'm really enjoying it. I find it to be very comfortable to wear, never have any issues with it. Fits quite comfortably. There's a sizing kit that you get when you first sign up to get the ring, and there's multiple sizes that you can try. The size that I've got fits perfectly, never comes off my finger, and I've had no issues with it at all. I think it looks quite nice as well. I know Kieran prefers the look of the Oura ring. I haven't tried the Oura ring. It looks pretty similar to the Oura ring for me, apart from some of the design features on it. What I would say is that there aren't too many versions of the Ultrahuman Ring AIR at the moment. There probably will be more colours coming over time. But one thing I have noticed is that the outside colour of the ring has started to wear away a bit on some areas after I pick things up or rub it across like a door handle or things like that. So it's starting to come off a little bit. So that might be an issue if you've got the matte black version, and I can see a bit of silver coming out underneath. Other than that, I actually think it's quite a nice ring. I've not had any issues with it at all. It feels very comfortable, and I can't see a massive difference in these rings. I'm not massively into rings anyway, so I don't really know what a nice ring looks like, but it seems fine for me.
So the Ultrahuman, design and fit-wise, this is a size 8, which is the same size as my Oura ring. I did use the testing kit beforehand, tried on all the little plastic rings, and I think I'm probably between sizes. There isn't a half size, so there wasn't a 7.5. And obviously you want the ring to be loose enough that when your fingers swell when you're running, it doesn't feel really tight and restrictive. But I would say if I'm washing up or in the shower, this probably feels a little bit too loose. So I would definitely recommend getting the sizing kit, not trying to do the online thing, and wearing it for 24 hours. I wonder if I'd worn it for 24 hours, whether the 7 would have been a better fit. Design wise, I wouldn't have chosen this matte black colour. It was the only colour that Ultrahuman did at the time when I started testing it. I think it doesn't kind of disappear on my hand as much as the Oura ring, but I imagine if it was gold or silver it would, and it's good that there are other options now. And I would say after probably a couple of months of testing, this has got a little scratched. I mean, I've had my Oura ring for a year and it is pretty scratched on the underside because obviously you're wearing it all the time. But I think with the matte black version, you do notice those scratches a little bit more. So it's something to bear in mind if you do prefer the matte version.
Now, I'm not really a fan of the app. One thing I love about Oura is it has a certain simplicity in the app. The data and the recommendations are clear and concise. You do have to do a bit of digging and a bit of understanding, but generally you know what you're looking at when you fire it up first thing in the morning and dive into your data. The Ultrahuman has some of that Oura layout with a decent at-a-glance screen of all your major stats, and it's trying to cover a really wide range of metrics, but I feel like it's often overcomplicated, it's convoluted, and it's not that intuitive to use. It took me ages to find the workout tracker, for example. It's like a little hidden plus to work out how to track your runs. Now, many of the metrics also, I think, lack clear explanation, not only about how they're calculated, but also what they're trying to achieve, what you're supposed to do with the information. And that's a big problem for me. Now, the best example I can give of this is the mild obsession with circadian rhythm. The Air seems intent on shifting your body clock to an earlier rhythm, but it's not really clear why that's a good thing, why you might want to do it. I already get up at 7 a.m. and go to bed at 10 p.m. pretty religiously, so why I'd want to shift my wake times even earlier, as the ring was suggesting to me, is really unclear, and the whole thing feels overly complex. It feels like it's trying to do the sciencey biohacking stuff a little bit too hard, and for most people I think it's going to feel impenetrable.
So I've been using the Ultrahuman Ring AIR pretty much every day, and I go into the app quite a lot because you get a lot of notifications about things that it's telling you that you need to do. What I found about the app is that I think because Ultrahuman's a relatively new company, and they have a lot of new products that are coming out, it seems to be in a constant state of development. So there are lots of new things being added all the time. And as a result, it is quite a tricky app to use. There is a lot of information in there. It's quite difficult to really work out the things that you need to be looking at. It seems to track and log a lot of things which I don't really need to know. So I think it's in an early stage where the actual features within the app are still being refined quite a bit. There is a lot of information in there. There is content in there, articles, there are videos and things like that in there to explain some of the things that the ring is trying to tell you. As a result, it's actually quite difficult to really get simple, clear updates on the things that you need to know about. There's a lot of reading, there's a lot of information, tooltips in there that give you more information on what you need to know about those specific areas like HRV and things like that. But it is quite a cumbersome app and there's a lot of information in there. Sometimes finding things is quite difficult. I know that Kieran mentions it was quite hard to work out where to log your run. I wasn't sure about where to do this. It was actually logging an event, and it is not the easiest thing to find in the app. So there's probably quite a bit of work that Ultrahuman need to do in order to modify the app to make it a bit easier and smoother to use, because for someone like me, I'm pretty tech savvy. I know how to navigate my way around most systems. If I wasn't tech savvy, or if I say bought it for my mum or someone, they probably wouldn't be able to use it because there's a lot of information in there, and they really would just want the highlights from what the ring was trying to tell you and not give you all the information to then delve in further to understand what you're getting told. So for me, the app is not quite there yet, does need a bit of work, but on the other side, if you are the sort of person that really wants loads and loads of information about what the ring is telling you, there is a lot in there. So you can dive in and go through lots of information until your heart is content.
So the app interface, it is very detailed. I think I have probably tested fitness trackers for a good number of years now, and I've never quite, I think with the rings, it is so detailed. There is so much information there. I do think there's pros and cons. If you're not bothered about kind of really delving into the weeds, you can just open the app every morning. Obviously there's no screen, you have to do everything through the app. You can just open the app every morning, look at your numbers, your scores out of 100, and get enough of a picture of how you've slept and how you've recovered. If you really want to delve into details, you can do this with the Ultrahuman. There is so much data there. I did find the language is a little bit different, a little bit confusing at times to other testers, and I would say there's a massive focus on stimulants and sunlight, which I haven't really seen before in trackers, and I don't know if there's enough information on why are we focusing on stimulants and sunlight so much. Obviously that's to do with sleep, but that's not the only thing you're tracking with this ring. So I would say there's a lot of information there. It is super detailed, but I did find it at times a little bit too much and a little bit confusing.
Okay, I've tested the ring in detail for a month up against the Coros Pace 3, the Garmin Enduro 2, the Oura and the HRV for Training app, as well as looked at the sleep accuracy versus an 8 Sleep smart mattress. And I have got a lot to say about the tracking and accuracy of this. Not much of it, I'm afraid, is very positive. In my tests, the accuracy of the movement, the heart rate and the sleep tracking was often quite a way off. The workout heart rate tracked far too low most of the times during my runs. The non-workout kind of normal movement tracking also underestimated my daily movement often. One day it suggested, for example, I'd only cover 20.5 kilometers when I'd run a half marathon by 11 a.m, played football that day and walked at least another 2.5 miles during the day. So it was way off. The automatic sleep tracking was no more reliable. The Air tries, but sadly often fails to log nod off and wake up times. It also struggles to register midnight toilet trips as wakeful interludes. My Garmin Enduro 2, though not bulletproof, was far better at accurately tracking sleep, so I wouldn't replace it for that. In my tests, the sleep tracking frequently started late, and we're talking midnight when I went to sleep at 10 p.m. It often stopped tracking hours short of when I actually woke up too, so that was way off. Unfortunately, the bad thing is that this skews the other recovery recommendations with the Air ring as well, because the insights are reliant on that sleep data. It contributes to the other recovery information that you get. Speaking of which, if you're looking for a tool that helps you identify when your recovery is on point, the Ultrahuman Air attempts to quantify your body's response to training and life's daily stress and struggles. It does this by offering daily recommendations based on a blend of heart rate variability, heart rate, temperature and sleep, so that you know when to push and rest. Unfortunately, again, I regularly had large gaps in my overnight heart rate readings. There were just big chunks where it wasn't reading, and in my heart rate variability readings. One night my HRV, for example, was clocked to 0 for the whole night. And when you compare the recovery scores against the reliable HRV for Training app, the Air didn't always track the same recovery trends. It didn't even match the Garmin's for that. It also regularly failed to match how I actually felt that day.
So when it comes down to tracking, I think this is the major issue with the Ultrahuman Ring Air at the moment. It's a little bit all over the place what you get back. Some of it isn't bad, some of it doesn't really seem to tally up with other tracking tools that I've used, and as a result it's quite difficult to really use that data because you're not sure how accurate it is. Sleep I found to be pretty good. I know Kieran said his was a little bit out. Mine's been pretty accurate. I use my Garmin Fenix 7 Pro for all of my other tracking, and it seems, when it comes to sleep, it seems really accurate. I think the best way to view sleep accuracy is you should really know if you've slept for 8 hours and things like that. The Garmin Fenix 7 Pro always seems to get it right. If I go out for a night out, if I've done a marathon, things like that, and it's affected my sleep, it generally always tends to pick those things up. The Ultrahuman Ring Air is getting the same sorts of times most of the time. It's giving me the same hours of sleep quite a bit. So it's pretty accurate when I'm comparing it with the Garmin Fenix 7 Pro. Sometimes it does seem to be a little bit off though, and doesn't quite pick up what the Garmin is picking up. And I know that the Garmin's right because I know what I've been doing. So when there's a night where I have been out for a night out and I know I've had a really bad sleep, I've been waking up through the night and it tells me that I've had a poor sleep and I've only had about 5 hours in total, I'm pretty sure that's accurate. Whereas the Ultrahuman Ring Air sometimes doesn't pick those fluctuating events up and isn't as accurate in those cases. But overall, on a normal night's sleep where I'm getting 8 hours and the times I go to sleep, they do seem pretty much the same. So I think sleep is not too bad in it, apart from those anomalies where it struggles to pick up those things that you're doing that aren't within the normal realms of your activity. Recovery index is a funny one because I do find that it massively doesn't tally up with what I'm getting from my Garmin, and the stuff that I'm getting from my Garmin does seem to pretty accurate. It takes into consideration the training that I'm doing, the sleep, and I get a pretty accurate score based on how I feel and what I know about my activity based on the last few days. The Ultrahuman Ring Air tends to be a lot more positive about what my position is and my recovery. And even if I've done a marathon and then been on a night out, it still seems to think that I'm in a pretty good position. I'm recovered quite well and I'm fairly prepared for more training. Whereas the Garmin's pretty honest and it will say I'm not, because I've not slept and I've clearly done quite a lot of training. I think a lot of those things come down to the data that's being tracked by the Ultrahuman Ring Air. It does not track workouts very well. The new workout tracking feature that sits within the app is in beta, and it's clearly got a long way to go. It only tracks an hour of activity, so I tried to track my marathon in it and it obviously capped out at 1 hour, so it doesn't know that I've done a marathon. It just thinks I've been walking around quite a lot. The steps seems to be quite under what I'm getting from Garmin. So on the day that I did Abingdon Marathon, I tracked my steps automatically. I ended up getting about 57,000 steps on the day. I was doing a lot of walking around as well. After the marathon, we went out for the evening. I got 56,000 steps. The Ultrahuman Ring Air gave me about 40 something thousand, which was massively under based on the fact that I'd done a marathon and I have quite little steps anyway, so I generally get more steps than would be expected when I do a marathon. So it seems like it's not getting all of the data through correctly, and that might be affecting that overall recovery score, and giving you not an accurate depiction of the position that you're in. So definitely not good for me on the recovery side of things. Heart rate tracking, again, it really undercooks what I've done. So when I've used it to track workouts, it just seems to fluctuate very, very low. So if I'm going out for a run, normally my heart rate sits around 160 on average and will go up to about 180 depending on the type of run that I'm doing. If I'm using the Ultrahuman Ring Air to track that activity, it seems to sit far, far lower. It looks at it's around the 110, 120 mark, and just keeps dropping up and down throughout the course of that session. So it seems to massively undercook heart rate, and definitely not something that seems very accurate at all in what I've been using over the 2-month period. And that's probably something, again, that is affecting things like the recovery score, because it thinks I'm not really doing as much as I am.
So tracking wise, I have been testing it alongside the Oura, wearing one on each finger and using an Apple or a Garmin as well. I really wish there was the option. One thing that Oura does that Ultrahuman doesn't is give you the option to kind of tag a workout, like to, when it recognizes you've been moving more, there's no option to say that was a run, that was a HIIT session, that was walking the dog. I think it's just interesting if you're looking this closely at your heart rate and your data. I think it's interesting to kind of differentiate between different workouts, and you can't do this here, but I have found that the tracking is pretty similar. If you look at sleep and you look at heart rate, they're pretty similar across the Oura Ring and the Ultrahuman Ring. For sleep, the Oura and the Ultrahuman was slightly different, but the Ultrahuman and my Apple Watch were pretty much spot on. And when I'm saying different, I just mean in terms of what zone I'm in for sleep. They still recognise the same time of sleep, same time in bed, that kind of thing. And I would say one downside on the Ultrahuman as a woman is there is no period tracking. On the Oura, you can track your periods and you can kind of work out when you've ovulated based on your skin temperature, and obviously you can sync all that data to natural cycles and get it really clear, kind of red, green days, etc. You can't do that on the Ultrahuman. From what I found during testing or what I saw, you can track your skin temperature, sure, but there's no way to say, hey, I'm on my period. Hopefully that's something that comes in the future, but it wasn't something I could find during my testing.
I'm massively unconvinced there's much benefit here for runners. Having the workout tracking limited to 1 hour seems crazy. In any case, the mid-workout heart rate data was wildly inaccurate for me, so its run tracking is pretty useless. You're never going to rely on this instead of your watch. In fact, your watch already does a much better and more accurate job than the Air of doing most of the other stuff outside of the running too. And that, the accuracy of all the non-running data leaves a lot to be desired here. And that lack of accuracy means I really wouldn't rely on the Air to inform my running and training schedule. For me, you're much better off taking a single HRV reading each morning from the HRV for Training app. It's cheaper, it's more accurate, and it's actually more informative and more reliable.
So as a result of that tracking, what I would say that it's not a very useful tool for runners, especially if you're a runner that is doing over 1 hour in a session, because it just won't track it. Even if you were a very, very general runner and you didn't really care that much about the stats, because of that heart rate inaccuracy, it's not going to give you a lot of information that you can really use. Really, the only thing I'm getting out of the running tracking from this is that it tracks it. So it will recognize it within the app and say that you have been out running. But in reality, it's not giving you any useful data off the back of that you can then use for your own training plans and things like that. So for runners, I don't think it's very useful at all. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the Ring to really make it a useful training tool, and combine that information with something that's really useful and clear within the app, because at the moment the information I'm getting around recovery is not accurate based on what I've actually been doing. So I think there's a lot of work that the team need to do in developing how runners and workouts use it. The other thing I would say as well is when it comes to workouts, I know it's not running, but when I go to the gym, I do a lot of weights, and I can't wear this when I'm doing weights because it scratches it. So I tend to use a lot of barbells and dumbbells in the gym, and it gets in the way a bit. It doesn't feel very comfortable, but also I have to take it off just because I'm worried I'm going to take all of the matte black off. So there's an issue there as well. So it's quite hard to track workouts with it, because unless you're doing a workout that doesn't require weights, it's probably not going to be that useful.
So for runners, I think this is more of a smart ring question in general. I don't think every runner needs a smart ring. It's definitely not something you need if you wear, most of the Garmins you would buy now would have the ability to track your sleep and track your skin temperature, track your heart rate. So it's definitely not an essential. I think if you're someone who doesn't want to wear your running watch or a smartwatch or a fitness tracker all the time because you don't like the look of them, the Ring is a great way to keep track of how your body is, how you're recovering, without having to wear a watch all the time. But is it essential for runners? Definitely not. If you're a runner who's really trying to get to the top of your game, you get a lot of data here, and I think there are studies that say it's slightly more accurate, so maybe temperature and stuff is slightly more accurate around your finger than your wrist, but it's definitely not an essential for runners. But I do think it is a good pick if you want to really delve into your data.
Now, up against the Oura, overall I think the Oura is ahead of the Ultrahuman Air on accuracy, on the presentation of the data, on the methods it uses to calculate key metrics, and the way it explains each metric that it's trying to achieve, what it's trying to give you. For me, the Ultrahuman feels like it's overreached a bit with some of the complicated, not entirely useful metrics, like that circadian lock thing that I mentioned. And even though you've got the bother of a monthly subscription with the Oura, I think it's worth paying for that data that's more reliable. Though in all honesty, I'm not sure that I would go for either of these now. I just use the HRV for Training app and my regular running watch.
And finally, the Ultrahuman versus Oura. This is a really tricky one. I've been using Oura a lot longer, and Oura have been around for a lot longer. I think Oura launched their first ring in 2015, whereas Ultrahuman is definitely a newer brand, a newer player on the market. So you're kind of buying in with Oura, you're buying into that. They've spent a long time tweaking their app, whereas Ultrahuman, in the time I've been testing it, have done loads of updates. So I imagine in a couple of years' time, they'll probably have really fine-tuned their products, but right now, on a kind of safer pick, I'd say Oura have definitely kind of fine-tuned it a lot more. I personally find the app a little bit easier to use. I think the language is a bit more user-friendly, and just the way it's displayed, I find it a little bit better and a little bit easier to understand as someone who writes about running and has a passion for fitness, but I'm not a sports scientist, so it kind of breaks it down a bit better. Obviously Oura do a lot of more female tracking, and for me the fact that Oura syncs to kind of my period tracking app makes it an obvious choice. If I'm wearing a ring, I want it to be able to be used by other apps, and you get that with Oura. That's not to say you won't in the future with the Ultrahuman, but right now the Oura has better can connect it to other apps easier. So right now I would opt for the Oura over the Ultrahuman, but who knows, in the future that you might be able to do that with the Ultrahuman. And I have been super impressed. It's a lot lighter. It's a lot lighter than the Oura, and now it's available in other colours. I think it's more accessible.
Verdict then, and you've got to salute the amount of tech that's squeezed into a comparatively tiny wearable here. And if you're looking for a health tracker that's more discreet and arguably easier to wear all day and night than most fitness watches, things like the Whoop strap, this ticks that box from a design point of view. But no matter how compact and convenient it is, the tracking accuracy is ultimately the most important thing about any of these wearables. That and how easy it is to turn the data you get into insights and simple actions. And I think that's where the Ultrahuman Air really falls down for me, and it remains way behind the simpler and more reliable Oura Ring. And in fact many of your regular running watches. From your adenosine clearance window to your temperature minima and circadian dead zone, there's a lot of sciencey looking stuff here, but the app for me is complicated, and unless you're big into biohacking, lots of this can seem really impenetrable. It's not always clear how Ultrahuman calculates your data and scores either, and the advice offered is sometimes convoluted and contradictory. Worse still, in our tests at least, the accuracy was often way off. Beyond that, as a running tool, I think it's pretty limited. The workout tracking's not great, and for me I don't think you're getting much more value here than you'll get from all the stuff that's already on most of your regular running watches from Garmin, Coros, Polo, etc. So I'm afraid for me, on the Ultrahuman Air, it's a no.
Okay, so my verdict's on the Ultrahuman Ring Air. So I've been using this for about 2 months now. I actually really like having it on. I like having something that's tracking my data all the time. I like the idea of it. The app, to be honest, I am the sort of person that will sit and play around with data, read what it means and all those sorts of things. So I have actually enjoyed testing it. It's the first time I've used one of these sorts of rings, so it has been eye-opening in terms of what you can get out of it. I definitely think if it was developed well and updated so that you're getting more accurate readings, you're getting clearer information in the app, I think it could be a very useful tool, especially that running side of things as well, and the way that it tracks workouts. If that worked really well, that could be a nice feature as well. I know a lot of people that don't like wearing watches when they go out running. That could be a really nice tool for them as well. Problem is, in its current state, it just isn't reliable enough to trust the data that's coming through for me. And as a result, I can't really test the information that's coming through from the app, because it doesn't seem to be matching up with the Garmin Fenix 7 Pro data that I'm getting, but also doesn't seem to be matching up with how I actually feel. And I think that's a very key indicator of if these things work, especially when it comes to things like sleep. If I feel like I've been rested fully a week, but I'm consistently getting a bad sleep score, this is clearly not matching up there. So I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the Ultrahuman Ring Air and the accuracy and the data that you get back from it. One good thing I would say about them is that they are pulling a lot of information in and giving a lot of explanatory information about what that data means, which is good for some people. And it's nice to have those videos. It's nice to have that written content that gives you advice on those areas. But it's just a little bit murky in the app. It needs to be a lot clearer, a lot more clarified. It needs to be the sort of information that people can really act on. Using the same example again, if I was to get this ring for my mum, she would not delve through any of the information that sits in that app. She just wants to know her steps, if she's hitting her steps, if her heart rate's good, if she's sleeping well, those top line stats, and then just give you some information on how to change that. Whereas delving into all the information that is available maybe work for some people, but it does make it a more convoluted piece of tech, which is tricky for probably a lot of people to really get their head around. So at the moment, it's a tricky one to say. It is a good option. I think there's a lot more development that needs to be done on it to make it just refined and just a clearer tool that people can use as a training aid, especially for runners. That's it from us on this full review of the Ultrahuman Ring Air. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and click that little bell. And if you go into the caption below, you can find a link to our podcast, which comes out at the end of each month. Thanks a lot for watching. Catch you next time.